Good morning, panel. Neil Chandler, Counsel for the Chinese Canadian Concern Group. Ms. Telford, perhaps for you, I'd like to start just to clarify the PMO's role with respect to advising the Prime Minister and how that might differ from other advice that the Prime Minister receives. The PMO provides strategic advice to the PM on a whole range of issues that might concern the Prime Minister, political strategy, communications, and so on. You'd agree with that?
Yes.
And while the Prime Minister also receives advice from other nonpartisan sources like the Privy Council Office, government departments, am I correct in suggesting that the PMO is somewhat uniquely focused on the political implications of the PM's decisions?
Largely.
You take a bit of a partisan role in providing your advice.
We definitely come at it from a political lens for many issues, but I would say in this space, and that's why I say largely, in this space, this should be very nonpartisan space, and we do treat it as such.
I understand. If I can focus all of your attention on a specific period of time, and that's the fall of 2022, I understand you were all in your current positions then, correct?
Correct.
You're all nodding your heads, okay?
Yes.
Correct.
Around that time in September 2022, a Spanish NGO released a report that brought to light the existence of what have been called overseas police stations being operated by the Communist Party of China in this country. Are you familiar with the issue?
Yes.
Yes.
All of you, yes. And we've heard in this inquiry, and there is a document I can take you to if necessary, that the PMO was first briefed on this issue in October 2022. Can you confirm that? Does that accord with your recollection?
I believe that is correct. Yeah.
Would you like me to take you to a document to confirm that, or are you able to say with
I'm
confidence
happy to look at the document.
Okay. Court operator, please can sum 15. This is a CSIS summary of intelligence on the People's Republic of China police stations. And if we scroll down to paragraph 4, please. Briefly, it says, also in October 2022, the Prime Minister's office was briefed on the issue and it was discussed at a deputy minister level meeting. Does that accord with your recollection?
So perhaps I can provide some context here if it's helpful. One, I'm not sure that I can personally speak to a deputy minister level meeting, as those typically don't involve Prime Minister's office. I was engaged on this file. The NGO report certainly caught our attention, as it did rightly so, concerned communities and the media. And at that point, we started asking questions about the findings in the report, what was known to the national security establishment in Canada, and then began a process of conversations, as is part of our regular work, to understand exactly the presence in Canada and to begin to push back and express our displeasure and demand that this activity stop.
Mr. Travers, can you tell me if you recall when the Prime Minister was first briefed on the issue?
I don't specifically recall when he was first briefed.
Okay. You all understood from your briefing on this issue that the overseas police stations were allegedly hubs of illegal activity that were being conducted by agents or proxies of the Chinese government, and they were targeting members of the Chinese diaspora in Canada.
Yes.
Can you confirm that knowledge?
Yes.
Generally, yes. And was there a concern in your office that Canada's response to the issue might upset what was already a delicate relationship with China? It was a very difficult time in our relationship with China, perhaps continuing to today. Allegations of interference in our elections, the Chinese spy balloon, the motion in the House to recognize the Uyghur genocide, the two Michaels had returned only a year prior. Were those relations with China front of mind for you when considering this issue and the advice you were going to provide the Prime Minister?
I'm happy to speak to my approach at the time and my views, which remain the same. My engagement with colleagues in the public service was to determine as quickly as possible the nature of the presence in Canada and to have a conversation about how robustly and how quickly we could push back against this presence. The activity is unacceptable. Obviously, relations were tense at the time, but the immediate reaction was to understand the scope of the threat and to understand exactly what could be done to push back against it, recognizing that some of the activity that was taken was also independently taken by law enforcement, given the nature of the issue. We were focused on how to address this.
And it was a relevant consideration for you how our response to the issue might affect our relationship with China.
That's, forgive me, to be more clear, that's not what I said. I said that relations were tense at the time, but that we were focused on addressing the issue.
Are you suggesting that you would not have taken that into consideration?
What I'm suggesting is that our focus on this issue was pushing back and then mitigating and eliminating the threat that was posed by the police stations to Canadians.
Was there any communication between your office and the Minister of Public Safety on the appropriate level of priority that should be given to this issue?
I would say that there was, as part of our regular work on files of this sort, there were conversations with our colleagues, both within the public service and at the ministerial level. And they themselves, my understanding is, were engaging on this issue, including working with the Department of Public Safety.
What was the essence of those conversations? Was it to prioritize this? Was it to tread lightly on the issue? Give us a sense of the nature of those
remotely to tread lightly. I will again try to be as clear as I can. The essence of the conversations were to fully understand the scope of the issue and to respond using the full range of measures that were available in order to address it.
If I could just add, I think, look, whenever we're dealing with any of these number of issues you might point to, you of course situate it within a broader context and geopolitical context. Having said that, and I think there's evidence of this in what we saw the Prime Minister and Minister of Public Safety and Minister of Global Affairs do yesterday, and they repeated this multiple times yesterday, and I'm sure you'll hear this again. Their first priority is the protection of Canadians, and that's what kicks into play as a priority if that is ever in question.
Thank you for your information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner.